All right, YouTube. I know y'all are probably sick of Jun Shadow content, but honestly, I'm not sick of playing it, so tough luck. So I've played Jun Shadow in like just about every challenge that I've played in recently, aside from one that I played Demir Shadow in, which I don't know if that video is out or not at the time of releasing this one. So, spoiler alert. Yeah. But yeah, I've been playing Jun Shadow in several leagues, playing it in on stream, playing it in challenges. Part of the reason, or I'd say like the majority of the reason, is I feel like with Jun Shadow, I have as close to an extremely favorable matchup as I can get against Scam, the creature-based matchups, and anything like mid-range or control. And the downside is I lose a lot of points against the unfair stuff. So rhinos to an extent, Living End especially, Tron, Amulet Titan, those kind of decks. But pick up a lot of, and kind of Beanstalk, but pick up a lot of wins against Scam, against Blue-White Control, Blue-Black Control, Jun Saga, Prowess, Hammer Time, Hardened Scales, all that stuff. So I think the relevance of Scam is a big reason why I've enjoyed playing the deck. And I've enjoyed kind of messing around with some of the configurations. I think we saw the last challenge video I posted, the showcase challenge video. We went like 4-0 or 5-0 or something against Scam over the course of the day, just like eating them left and right. So if you haven't seen that video yet, it's also up on YouTube already. So you can go see a bunch of Scam matchups. But I think with Scam being as prevalent as it is, there's a very good chance that any league that you jump into, you're going to see 2 or 3 Scam decks at least. Or maybe 3 or 4 like Bowmaster decks. And I think this has a very favorable time into this. So as long as you can gear your sideboard to kind of fight over the unfair stuff a little bit more, I think you're in a solid position. So let's go ahead and go over this league. So you can see some of the ideas I've been messing around with. Questing Druid's kind of like still the big question mark in the main deck. I do very much feel like Questing Druid is win more. Like I'm already doing really well in the fair matchups with Fable and Croxa and Goyf and Bowmaster Shadow, that I don't really need the Questing Druids. So for the most part, they're just kind of there to help me dig for like some of the things to help fight the unfair stuff. Dig for that Chalice or that EE, something like that, the Blood Moon. So if you don't think it's doing a good enough job of that, I probably wouldn't run them. I'm still, like I said, messing around with the Questing Druid slot, trying out a few different options. So stick with me, see how it goes. I do think that one of the biggest benefactors to Jun Shadow, one of the reasons that I've had a lot of success with it recently, is this philosophy of raising the floor of the deck. I think one of the detriments to a lot of Shadow builds right now is they're trying to like raise the ceiling so high. They're trying to do something insanely over the top, like 8 copies of Expressive Iteration with your 4 iterations and 4 Questing Druids and these breach kills and whatnot. And it just like, if this is the ceiling of the deck, the floor is way, 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 way down here, because you start implementing all these cards that just have a high fail rate. Your opponent has Piece of Grave Hate, and now all of a sudden your Underworld Breaches do nothing. or your opponent plays a couple solitudes and now all of a sudden like your best threats are dead. And I think that one of the cool things Jund Shadow has going for it is, at least in my opinion, it raises that floor a significant amount, because now your dead stuff gets pitched to Fable. Your Croaksas, even if your opponent has Grave Hate, are still 2 mana Raven's Crime, which is a higher floor than 2 mana do literal nothing. 2 mana sit on the battlefield, you can't cast anything from your graveyard. So I've really been liking that philosophy of like raise the floor, make it so your worst hands are still a little bit better and you can compete, and it gives you a much better shot of winning games in the long run, especially against unfair things like Scam. So let's go ahead and jump into the matches so you can see what Jund Shadow looks like. Maybe it's something you want to check out. As always, deck list down below, as well as the Twitter, Discord if you want to come talk shop, give some ideas, give some feedback, and Twitch in case you want to see a live stream of Jund Shadow the next time we're live and running it through its paces. So round number 1, opponent leading off on a Misty Rainforest. So my immediate assumption would be something like Rhinos or like Beanstalk, something like that. Breeding Pool, Cycle, Oliphant. So immediately we know that it's Living End, one of the worst matchups we have. Unless post board you get like a Chalice and you're able to fight through a Force of Negation or a Beseiju, something like that. Probably not winning against Living End. I have seen people who've boarded into like 4 Dolphies and disregarded Croaksa post board or Giganta post board. I don't hate that idea. It's something I might try out a little bit more. But as far as like game 1 here, literal nothing we can do. Opponent Violent Outbursts into their 4 guys. We've got no possible plays of any sort of relevance. We Thoughtseize, take a Subtlety. We play out a Ragavan and a Shadow just to try to throw some bodies on board. But if our opponent tramples up their Striped Riverwinder, that's it. That is all she wrote. Can't do anything. I know it sounds depressing to say we can't do anything so much, but you do have to understand that like the deck is geared towards beating decks like Scam. You're going to have a rough time into your opponent's Living End deck. But that's why we have a sideboard. That's why it's best 2 of 3 and not best of 1. So sideboarding against Living End, I'm bringing in like Veil of Summers to fight over Force of Negations and Griefs, bringing in Chalice of the Voids, any Grave Hate I have, like Unlicensed Hearse, Nihil Spellbomb, Soul Guide Lantern, especially if you're afraid of like Leyline of Sanctity. If you've got Dolphies or Endurances or anything to that effect, it's coming in. But ultimately, Chalice of the Void is the card that I think gives you the best chance of winning. Also bring in like Blood Moons and Magus of the Moon, because there's a chance turn 1 Ragavan, turn 2 Blood Moon could cheese you out a win. And at the end of the day, if something cheeses you out a win, it's worth considering. So opening hand, Ragavan, turn 1, turn 2 Magus of the Moon, even have the basic Swamp, Thoughtseize potentially. I can't throw it back. It's a bad matchup. I have a chance to cheese here. I've got to keep it. Lead on Ragavan. Hope we don't get griefed. If we do get griefed, then they do have to choose between the Magus and the Thoughtseize. That's kind of a plus. Them having a basic Forest. A little bit worse, because now they get access to Violent Outburst because of our, or even with our Blood Moon or our Magus of the Moon. I make the decision here to go for the Magus instead of the Blood Moon because it dodges Force of Negation and it dodges Beseiju. So like 2 of the 3 or 2 of the however many options to deal with it, we get to dodge with Magus of the Moon. Opponent cycle, 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 cycle. Subtleties are Magus. Okay, so we bottomed the Magus. They had the answer to that. By Blood Moon, again, chance that they had like Force Negation. Find Chalice. That's extremely good. So now we can Thought Seize to try to clear the way of a Force Negation for Chalice. And it cycles. And I just wanted to pause this because I found it hilarious. Double Violent Outburst. So even through the Thought Seize, they can still Cascade even with a Blood Moon down. Beseiju. So they have the answer to the Chalice of the Void, or if we'd had the Blood Moon, they had the answer to that. The Subtlety for the Magus of the Moon. I don't think you could sculpt a more perfect hand for Living End against anything that I threw at them. Had the Grave Hate covered, had the creature covered. Like, nothing you can do about that. And I do think this is one of those times that it's really important to stress that, especially with Magic, there's going to be games like this. Modern, especially, is so polarizing. You have so many times that things just aren't going to work out that you really have to do a good job of like letting it roll off your back. We're going to Violent Outburst here in case we happen to hit the extra lightning bolt. We don't. So that plan went out the window. Well, there's going to be a lot of times where there's just nothing you can do. And you have to let it go. You have to move on. There's more matches. This, I thought, was a great match actually to include in this league, in this YouTube video, because it just goes to show it did not matter. I could have Blood Moon instead of Magus. They had the Beseiju. I could have, I could have Blood Moon. They didn't Beseiju. They had the Violent Outburst. They had the second Violent Outburst for the Thought Seize. Let it go. Look for the bolt. Don't find it. Move on with our lives. They even found a Force of Vigor, so they could have taken out Blood Moon. But, yeah. That is, like I said, the epitome of you got it. Turn 1 Zagoth Triumph from our opponent makes me assume Zoo. I don't think there's a lot of decks that are running Zagoth Triumph. So now we're in the mindset of trying to find like Unholy Heats and Lightning Bolts, stuff like that to deal with some creatures. Get Goyf out. Bowmaster Pingus is fine. They could find well, I guess they find Ping Goyf Lightning Bolt. That's pretty solid. I was going to say they could find a Leyline Binding, but instead we're just going to get down Shadow, get down Bowmasters. Let's talk about this decision real quick to play the Shadow at 3 life. I could have gone down to 8 and played the Shadow as a 5/5. But if I go down to 8, I could just be dead to something like Tribal Flames Bolt. They already showed us Bolt. Now, if you're like me and you're obsessed with identifying factors, so things that identify you as being against one certain variation of a deck as opposed to another. I've seen some zoo lists running Bowmaster, so that's not crazy. And I've seen them running Overgrown Tomb Zagoth Triumph. Marsh Flats, however, in the graveyard on their side, I have only seen the black fetches out of the variants of Zoo that are running like the scam package. So Fury, Grief, I think a lot of them are running Up the Beanstalk, stuff like that. So I should have thought this is more likely a scam version of Zoo. And if that's the case, I should be going down to 8, playing out the Shadows of 5/5, because they're more likely to have Fury, and I don't think many of those lists are running Tribal Flames. So Shadow would dodge Bolt, it would dodge Fury. It wouldn't dodge like a scammed Fury, but dodging the front half of Fury is relevant. Third Bowmaster to ping our Bowmaster, and Leyline Binding the Shadow, so didn't matter. Didn't affect the game at all. But I do think that was something that I could have picked up on better. So we'll Bowmaster their Bowmaster. They Bowmastered our Bowmaster, and then they Scion, Leyline Binding, and we scoop it up. Because we don't have an answer to the Scion, we can't draw a bunch of cards, or we're just dead to the Bowmasters. And yeah, move on with our day, move to post board. Against Zoo, I'm usually siding out some amount of the stuff that loses me lives, like some Thought Seizes. Ragavan's pretty bad, especially against the Bowmaster build. Bringing in Veil of Summer, Terra Sunder answers Leyline Binding, and Scion of Draco. Blood Moon is a great way of shutting off their mana, shutting off like potential Leyline Bindings. And just like we called, they are on Scam Grief or Scam Zoo. So top deck Terminate there, really, really nice. Now we have the option to maybe get our opponent empty-handed with this fourth land drop. We can attack them with Goyf if they have like a Leyline Binding to answer it. This is why we don't play out the second land pre-combat, so we can save it and hopefully get the last card out of hand like this. If we play out the land early, then they know we have it. They might change up what they're discarding, and I want them discarding with the least amount of information possible. So immediately get back our Kroxa. If this had been an Underworld Breach instead of a Kroxa, they would have 2 or 3 more cards in hand, and we would be breaching back a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So I think Kroxa gets the point on this one, because mainly Kroxa like kills our opponent. Kroxa's ditched 4 cards, 3 or 4 cards there, and got the kill. That's a pretty high floor in my book. Game number 3, opening hand, 1 land, can't keep it. I wish I could say we could. Oh, I guess I kept it anyway. Man, I was bold on that one. Did I keep... Let's think about this. I feel like my best reason for keeping it would have been I've got Bolt Unholy Heat, and I'm on the draw, so I've got a couple chances to find the second land. And if there's Scam Grief, I've got Bolt Heat Terminate, so like a second land, and I get to deal with that. Maybe the hand's better than I'm giving it credit for. But I kind of think that if I had played this game over, I probably would have molded this for a 2-lander. At least a 2-lander. But then again, you know Moto rules. If you have a sketchy 7 and you throw it back, you're going to get an unkeepable 6. So ditching to hand size, which conveniently does get us a little closer to Delirium, so that's cool. Unfortunately, our opponent attacking in with the Kavu takes us away from Delirium. So really, really need to find an answer to the Kavu right here. Which we do get to terminate. So we're not out of the woods, clearly. Opponent's got a Beanstalk, but we aren't in horrible position here. I think we end up just Terra Sundering on their upkeep, get rid of this Beanstalk. Want to do it before their main phase so they can't hard cast like a Fury or something and draw a card. Thankfully, we do have some answers to the Fury. Opponent rips a second Fury, deals with our Shadow, but we've got Heat. Play another Shadow, because why not? If it worked the first time, why wouldn't it work the second time? except it didn't work the first time. Opponent's going to hit us with a Ragavan, play a Kavu, but we've got heat for the Kavu, pass back, got to take another hit off Ragavan. But if they're not playing Tribal Flames, I'm a little less worried about taking extra hits off the Ragavan. Goyf's pretty solid option to stand in the way of most of their threats. They end up Furying off the Ragavan, so I know it's down to Fury Unknown. Terminate the Fury, and like I've got a lot of gas if I can find the land, if I can find a little bit more to do. So love seeing the land here. Pass it back. Opponent passes to us, so I'm expecting like a Leyline Binding or something to deal with one of our threats. They apparently have nothing, so we get to bolt for lethal. Good showing out of us. Having all the interaction for the Furies and Ragavans and everything else. The Kavus. Love to see it. So on to match number 3. Really good hand on the draw. We've got Ragavan. We've got Thoughtseizes. We get Thoughtseize. We get to Thoughtseize. They Thoughtseize our Thoughtseize. So we Thoughtseize their Thoughtseize. And basically Bowmaster. So we get Stomping Ground there. Let's back up to the hand. Check it out. We get Stomping Ground there because my opponent has got a copy of Urborg. So we can get black mana from our Stomping Ground, giving us an effective Triome that comes in for 2 life untapped. Thoughtseize takes their Bowmaster. The rest of their hand, pretty weak. We've got a Demolition Field and a Cabal Coffers. So we're just trying to get to this Fable so we can start like throwing away Thoughtseizes and dead cards like that. Again, this is kind of what I'm referring to when I talk about like raising the floor of the deck is, hey, let me play things like Fable because in a matchup where I've got a lot of dead cards, like Thoughtseize here being pretty dead, I can Fable instead. Which we Thoughtseize and our opponent's got 2 Urborgs, so what are you supposed to do into 2 Urborgs? Cry? Because that's what I feel like doing whenever I play against Mono Black. That game with some dudes, play a Fable. Now we can like ditch Terminate if we think they aren't going to have a Shieldred. A March of Wretched Sorrow or Tarmogoyf here, if I believe. Yeah. March or Tarmogoyf, which is kind of okay because we have Fable just like flipping us into more cards. Ragavan off the top, big attack in. Can't play a Karn, unfortunately, but we can play a Goyf. I know that I'm putting myself into a rough spot against Damnation, but if they don't have Damnation, I'm trying to put as much pressure as I possibly can. And if they do have Damnation, I do still get to like dash Ragavan, flip Fable, and still get some amount of pressure on. So I'm not just like, oh no, Damnation. Opponent passes with a card in hand. They're dead on board and they didn't scoop. So I have to assume this is either a Bowmaster, a Fatal Push, or a third copy of March of Wretched Sorrow. So what I can do, since my opponent's at 8 life, I've got 6 power on board, plus the Ragavan, plus the double bolt. I just need 2 to get through. So what I can do in this case is I copy the Reflection, because if it's a targeted removal spell, they are really, really incentivized to target that copy, target the token for like the 2-for-1, kind of like what they just did with Fatal Push. If they do that and it's a March of Wretched Sorrow, then I terminate my own token so they can't gain the life, dash the Ragavan off 2 of my treasure tokens, hit them for 4, make another treasure token, double bolt them for lethal. So I've got the March of Wretched Sorrow covered. If it's a Fatal Push like this, then let it go, dash my Ragavan, double bolt them because I don't care about the life gain, so I don't need to terminate. If it's a Bowmaster, They can't kill the token. So it gives me another bigger body attacking in. I dash the Ragavan. They Bowmaster, ping the Ragavan. I terminate the Bowmaster. Attack in with my Bowmaster, my army token, my 2 shaman tokens. They block one of the shamans. They take 4 off of the other 2 or other 3, the shaman and the 2 Bowmasters, and I double bolt them. So I beat like any removal spell here. I beat Bowmaster. So yeah. I could attack in. I could attack in with Reflection, but if I attack in with Reflection and they've got a March of Wretched Sorrow on the Reflection, then I have to terminate and lose my own Reflection. I think I'm still fine, but it's kind of like free just to make the copy instead. And I think it does a better job of baiting out the removal spell. Ultimately, I don't think it changes anything if you attack with the Reflection because you're still terminating your own dude. But like I said, I think it baits the removal spell, so it's kind of free to do. Game 2 against Mono Black. Let's talk about sideboarding real quick. Most of the spot removals coming out. I keep in a little bit here and there. Like I keep in the bolts for some reach. I keep in Terra Sunders. They answer 1 ring. They can be kicked and answer a Shieldred or a Karn, something like that. I don't like Unholy Heat. I feel like they a lot of the time have incidental grave hate, like Cling to Dust. That can make it a little awkward. Opponent thought seizing on turn 1, leaving us with Ragavan means almost assuredly that they've got a Bowmaster or some sort of removal spell for the Ragavan. So we'll let them use that. Untap, get down our Goyf. Because like even if we don't play the Ragavan to not get it Bowmastered, they're still going to have the Bowmaster at some point, and it's still going to deal with the Ragavan. So I might as well just like make them have it right now. Maybe they're bluffing. Who knows? But I just don't think there's like any merit to holding on to that Ragavan to try to dash later. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense? I think it makes sense. So opponent, 4 mana, probably a March, could be a 1 ring, could be a Shieldred. Yeah, ends up being a March. We played out the 1/1 Shadow in case they had like another Bowmaster. Maybe that baits that, and we still have Tarmogoyf. But instead, we've got Shadow to start hitting down. We've got Giganta to play out. In a perfect world, we'd have a removal spell for this Bowmaster so we could Peat land. But in a less perfect world, we have our opponent just kind of drawing dead, and we're going to hit him in the face as much as we can. Bowmaster down the Bowmaster, yeah, so we can attack in, draw off our Peat land. Get the chump block, and we're just hoping to dodge Damnation. We want to dodge Damnation, and we want to find Kroxa. Opponent's last card's another Bowmaster. I do think I made a little bit of a misplay here. So they Bowmaster, ping my Bowmaster. I think I should have bolted their Bowmaster and forced through 6 damage, because 6 damage puts them dead to a Ragavan dash. If they top deck a Damnation, it takes care of or puts them dead to another bolt off the top, to Bowmaster if they draw a card, like a lot of stuff. And I was kind of like saving the bolt in case I needed the reach, but I should have just forced the reach there, like forced the 5 damage, because 5 damage is more than that bolt's giving me. But I kind of kept thinking, oh, if they have like a ring and they draw, I might want a bolt to catch them off guard there. I don't think that was worth it. So on to match number 4. Arid Mesa for a Ralgren Triumph. So I have no idea what this is. Like, I get blue-white control vibes, but I think they usually play all blue fetches and wouldn't play Arid Mesa. So, no idea at the moment. Glacial Fortress would lead me to believe blue-white control. Basic Plains, however, still a little iffy. Like, I wish I had some better pressure to play into a counter spell, but we've got shadows, so we're going to cast shadows, or some number of shadow. I don't want to get 2 for 1 by a Solitude, so we'll just play one of them, and our opponent plays a Skrelv's Hive. If you haven't seen this card before, don't worry, neither had I. 1 and a white enchantment. It's Bitter Blossom-esque. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life, and you create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact token with Toxic 1. So whenever it deals damage, you get a poison counter. And then if you have 3 or more poison counters, your tokens get lifelink. Or you're like, I think it might be just the Might. Something gets lifelink on their side. And so they play this out, and I'm like, okay, now I literally have no idea what's going on. I don't know if this is a combo deck. And then, yes, we got Modern Staple Condemned. Condemn. Put target attacking creature on the bottom of its owner's library. Its controller gains life equal to its toughness. Yeah. Controller gains life equal to its toughness. Condemn. Are you with me? Are you hearing the words that I'm saying right now? Condemn. In a constructed game of Magic. I should have added Giganta, but honestly, I was terrified. I didn't know what was going on. Now we got a Jace the Mind Sculptor ticking up on me. So it's like some sort of blue-white control. We're going to kill down the Jace. Play out another Shadow. I think this time I do add Giganta, yeah. But the bright side is these Might tokens can't block. So it's like not quite Bitter Blossom. Second Jace the Mind Sculptor and Path to Exile on our Shadow. So like somebody told my opponent that they've got the sauce for beating Shadow. Supreme Verdict. I don't know what's going on, but it terrifies me. So opponent's going to bounce our Giganta instead of Brainstorming, which is phenomenal for me because, hey, this gives me a chance to maybe deal with the Jace. Like, here's a Dashed Ragavan at the Jace plus a Bolt. That sounds a lot better than getting Brainstormed. I'm only at 6 life, but cool. I've got a blocker. They've got a bunch of lifelink tokens, but they can't block. Bowmaster, phenomenal pickup off the top because, hey, that both kills a token and blocks another one. So we'll flash in Bowmaster before the Questing Druid gets across to grow it a little bit. I don't think at this point I can beat more Wraths without finding Kroxa. So I'm just like going all in, saying deal with my stuff. Opponent cracks back with a bunch of tokens. We're going to kill off one of them because, I don't know, I don't see any other targets for this Terminate. And then we get Day of Judgmented. Day of Judgment. You're reading these cards correctly. These are cards played against me in a modern legal game. And I really... Detention Sphere. I know it's off the screen a little bit, but there's a Detention Sphere revealed behind there. My initial thought is this has got to be like a Lutri deck that doesn't have Lutri. Because I see 1 Day of Judgment, 1 Supreme Verdict, a Jace or 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor. So breaks the Lutri boundary a little bit, but they're not playing Lutri, so it's fine. But it feels like a Lutri shell that doesn't have Lutri. And let's keep going. Sideboarding, I honestly didn't know what to bring in because I didn't have a clue what they would be bringing in. So I just sideboarded as if it were like blue-white control. Boarded out some of my spot removal. Boarded in like the autumnal glooms. Boarded in... thought about the Veil of Summer, but I didn't see a counter spell. I think I boarded in one Veil of Summer for like Jace bounce, maybe Teferi or something, but I honestly wasn't sure what I was planning to do. I thought about bringing in the extra Terra Sunder if I was worried about Skrelv's Hive, but honestly, I'm not that worried about Skrelv's Hive, so I decided to kind of ignore that. We bobble them and see Modern Staple Urza's assembly, or Urza assembles something. Forgot the name of it, regardless. The first chapter, you scry 4, then you can reveal a Planeswalker and put it in your hand. The second one's like you can put a Planeswalker on the battlefield, and the third one's you can activate all your loyalty abilities a second time. So it's kind of like a big value engine for Planeswalkers. So now the Wraths make sense. The Jace makes sense. Skrelv's Hide still doesn't make sense, but one step at a time. See, Steam Vent's on the top of their library. We have not found a second land, so we can't play out one of our Goyfs yet, but we do get to Thoughtseize into just a whole mess of things that look like they're going to mess me up pretty bad. There we go. Jace, Detention Sphere, Path to Exile, Urza assembles the Titan. So I decided to take the Path to Exile so that took Detention Sphere because I want them to path one of my threats so I get my land drops. But that would only matter if I saw a second land, which we didn't, so we scoop and go to game 3. Now I have a little bit better of an idea of what I'm playing against. So I want all of my Unholy Heats in, board out all my Terminates. Board in the extra Terra Sunder because it can't answer a Planeswalker. And now I think the wheels are turning. We have a little better idea of what's going on. A little better idea of how to fight. Opponent ditches a Chandra, Torch of Defiance. I don't know why I didn't throw their hand out this game. But we Thoughtseize and we see Path, Fateful Absence, Chandra, Torch of Defiance, Teferi. Fateful Absence destroys a creature or Planeswalker, and you get 3 or 2 clue tokens. So we take the Path. They can't path our Kroxa. They get a tapped land, so we go ahead and Kroxa here, which gets the Chandra. If they had been able to Fateful Absence something, that would have been fine, because hey, I like having clue tokens. But we're just trying to get to escape Kroxa. That is my only goal here. All else fails to matter. Take Teferi, leave him with Fateful Absence and a big Teferi. So I just really hope they play something that lets me cycle this Veil of Summer. Honestly, I don't think it would have been the worst idea to just cast the Veil of Summer to make sure I could escape the Kroxa this turn. But we end up holding back on it, deciding to just wait for Giganta. I could have played Giganta that last turn, but I didn't want my opponent to instep, Fateful Absence, untap Teferi. So I decided to hold up Terra Sunder instead. And so if they hit the land, I could immediately Terra Sunder the Teferi. Instead, we got to deal with Skrelv's Hide and a Johnny Vengeant. I played a Johnny Vengeant in Standard and loved it. Don't know the last time I've seen it in Modern. I think when I was like first getting into Modern, quote, America Control was kind of popular with the Johnny. But that's been so long. Like a Johnny Vengeant, Cryptic Command. And so opponent's got a big Teferi. They decide to tick up and draw instead of killing our Kroxa or tucking our Kroxa, which is phenomenal for me. Obviously, the second Fateful Absence is a little bit less exciting, but just the fact that they were willing to like draw a card instead of dealing with our Kroxa in a matchup where me just escaping Kroxa over and over again is a really good deal for me. We get Fable. We can Lightning Bolt to get back Kroxa again if we want. We could Tarmogoyf and copy it. Ultimately, I think just like getting back Kroxa over and over again is the best thing I can possibly do, because not only do I get cards out of hand, but it produces a ridiculously quick clock. So now we're at the point of like, if they don't top deck something good right here, which Detention Sphere would have been if we didn't have Veil of Summer. If they didn't top deck something good right here, then we were just going to untap and kill them with like Kroxa Trigger, Reflection, or in this case, Tarmogoyf copy, because why not? Also could have dashed Ragavan, also could have not put in Tarmogoyf and just attacked with Fable and Kroxa. Bunch of options. Either way, we win. Yay. On to match number 5. Great hand on the play. Turn 1 Ragavan with the Thoughtseize. Gonna get Rag down. We see a counterspell on top of their library, so assuming some sort of like mURktide build, blue-white control, something like that. Looks like mURktide. Best tempo play in all of Magic. Ragavan gets to attack in after killing your opponent's Ragavan, and you get a 2-drop, so you're just like so far ahead of the curve here. Opponent's going to play their second Ragavan. We're going to say, cool, we've got Thoughtseize. Oh, you spell pierced it? Great. Unholy Heat your Ragavan. Like, we're going to gladly take this trade because I'm going to hit you down to 6. Get another treasure token. Now we've got really good pressure on board. You could play out a mURktide, but it would only be a 4/4. You got a Ledger Shredder and Channeler instead. Obviously, if we hit the land, that would be really cool to get to Terra Sunder, like the Ledger Shredder. But I'm also really fine just holding on to the Terra Sunder, because ultimately it can kill a mURktide. Got a Shredder Bolt. That's cool, because we have Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Goyf, Token, blah, 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 blah. Ditch our Ragavan, attack in, because our opponent's got 1 card in hand, so I know if they do something like... let's talk about this turn real quick. I'm attacking in for the treasure to make sure I can bolt plus Kroxa. If my opponent's got something relevant in hand, then I make my attack. I bolt the... whatever Shredder blocked the token, because the other Shredder is going to die to the Goyf when it chumps blocks. So I get to deal with both the Shredders. Kroxa takes the last card out of hand. And then I'm back to just like a Goyf on board, a Fable flipping. I'm nowhere near dead to a mURktide. Everything feels great. If their last card is a land by some chance, then Kroxa just kills them. Possibly. And my opponent decided like not to block, take the 5 off Goyf, so they're just dead to bolt. I could, realistically, I should Kroxa here for the information, just in case they discard something like a Questing Druid. Then I would know, hey, they're on Teamer, they're not on blue-red. Maybe that changes up how I sideboard. So I should have Kroxa'd for the information. Instead, I decided not to slow roll and bolt my opponent. But that is one of the reasons that I'm not a huge fan of people getting upset about like slow rolling. because a lot of times there is a technically optimal play that involves some amount of what would be considered to some people slow rolling. Things like bolting on your upkeep to play around or make you tap mana for counter spells, especially in a world where force negation exists. Or like right there, I've got the win with Bolt. They're tapped out. I know they can't force, but still, the optimal correct line would be to Kroxa for the information. What if my opponent discards like Fable of the Mirror Breaker, or they discard Blood Moon, or something like that? That would be good information to have. On to game 2 against mURktide. Trimming out a bunch of Ragavans, especially on the draw. Like, I think I kept one in and happened to find it here. So a bunch of Ragavans coming out on the draw. Bringing in any extra removal I have. Second copy of Terra Sunder. Any Grave Hate, like Unlicensed Hearse, Nihil Spellbomb. Extra copies of Terminate are coming in. Veil of Summer coming in. Boarding out Thought Seizes, because ultimately, like, I think I can do a pretty good job of the control deck post board. I don't really need to, because I do just have like big, good sized threats that dodge most of the removal. But I do have like Tarmogoyf that can get hit by what's it called? Unholy Heat. So you're not like the perfect control deck, but I do think you can play the control role in the matchup very well. Bolt first to play around Spell Pierce, and then get down the Goyf. Looks like opponent's got a mURktide. Well, mURktide, we've got a Terra Sunder. Hope they don't have the Spell Pierce. If they do, they're going to have the Spell Pierce next turn, so it doesn't get any better for me. But I can at least use up the Terra Sunder while they're tapped down to 1 to play around like Counterspell. Then they play out the second mURktide that's only a 4/4. So I decide instead of going for Terra Sunder, I'm just going to play out more Goyfs and Ragavans and stuff and start swinging in. And I get so rewarded here. You want to know why? Because my opponent plays a copy of the card Dress Down. Normally, Dress Down would be really bad for us. Dress Down would enter the battlefield. Goyf would lose the ability to determine its power and toughness. So it would just become a star +1, or in the case of Dress Down, 0. 0/0+1. So 0/1 Goyf. Dress Down resolves. I almost accidentally responded with Terra Sunder the mURktide. And then I thought, like, wait, let's see how they block before we do anything. Because if my opponent just says, like, no blocks, then I can Terra Sunder the Dress Down and kill them. Instead, they decided to block 1-on-1, and I think we can all see how this is going to go. Terra Sunder the Dress Down with mana to pay for Spell Pierce. Take out both of their threats. And yeah, I don't think opponent wants to play this game anymore. So they crack both their Fiery Islets and end up scooping it up there. And yeah, nice little 4-1. If you watch a bunch of the videos, you'll probably notice a trend that I have a lot of leagues that end up 4-1 and not a lot of leagues that end up 5-0. And personally, I am thrilled with that, because I would so much rather have a consistent like 60 to 80% win percentage than have some number of 5-0s thrown with like 0-2 drops and 0-3 drops, 1-3 drops, whatever. So if you're looking for content that has like all 5-0s, you're probably on the wrong channel, because I'm going to show the good matchups and the bad matchups and the losses. And I hate the idea of like splicing leagues and only showing the wins. I think that's boring. So if you want to learn something about Death Shadow, and I think most of the time learning comes from the failures, then you're in the right spot, because I fail a lot. But back to the start. Jund Shadow, Questing Druid, again, I think was like, meh. I still think it's pretty win more. That same spot could have been like another dude and done the same thing for the most part. Or it could have been another piece of interaction and been pretty comparable. Kroxa, fantastic. Love Kroxa so much, especially with Fable. Like, I think that late game engine is huge reason that the deck's shown the success that it has for me. In the sideboard, the Maguses, the Blood Moons for the unfair land stuff, the Chalices. Like, I almost think my perfect sideboard would be something like 3 Blood Moon, 3 Chalice, 3 Veil of Summer, 3 Engineered Explosives, Giganta, and then like, I don't even know what those last 2 slots would be. 2... Man, I really don't know. 2 Autumnal Gloom, sure. 2 Temur Battle Rage. And that would be like the way to go. Because again, like you saw round 1 against Living End, the unfair matchups are just where this deck struggles. You do not have the ability to say no. It's one of the reasons that we've been trying so much like 4-color Shadow recently, getting access to Stubborn Denial, Stern Scolding, stuff like that. Really nice. But yeah, if you're wanting to beat up on Scam, pick up the deck, give it a shot. If you're wanting to beat up on Living End, I would stay far away from it. The next changes I'm planning on trying out. I'm going to find something for Questing Druid. If you got suggestions, please let me know in the comments. I really want to know what's working for you, what's not working for you. Anything to throw out some brain waves and some ideas, I would love to hear. But other than that, yeah, I'll catch you back with the next update. Links all down below if you want to come hang out and talk ideas. So hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much for coming and watching. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. Catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.